Streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 8:37 now on this Thanksgiving Eve morning, and we wish you all a really happy Thanksgiving. We're so grateful that you let us into your lives every single day. And we've been talking so much, Patrice Onwuka, about so much of the American institutions that have intentionally been degraded by left-wing politics and cultural Marxism. Even the Macy's parade, as Terry Schilling told us earlier in the program, has gotten wokeified. So it's nice to embrace things that actually do celebrate American tradition and our founding principles. And to bring that to us today is Dr. Ben Carson, president of the American Cornerstone Institute, where you've been focusing quite a bit, Dr. Carson, on trying to restore those American values and principles that are being maliciously degraded by the organized left. So thank you for being here, and thank you for this project.
Well, absolutely, and thank you, Larry and Patrice, for being patriots at a time when it sometimes is not easy to do. And, Thanksgiving is such an incredible time if you go back and you look at our history. And that's the thing that's been degraded so much. They've been destroying our history. And, of course, your history is the basis of your identity, which is the basis of your beliefs. So if you interrupt that chain of things, obviously, people become very vulnerable.
Well, Dr. Carson, talking about people's vulnerability today, I think the vitriol and the divisiveness is because of that vulnerability, and we don't come together and listen to one another. And I'm going to reach back to an op-ed you wrote on Thanksgiving back in, I think, 2015, where you talk about, despite kind of conflicting times, we can't allow division and strife to separate us. Can you talk to us about what, maybe mentioning some of what you wrote in that op-ed, but what the importance of coming together and overcoming the divisions, because so much of what we hear is, well, you're black, you're part of this group, this background, and that's what's keeping us divided. Talk to us about why we need to be united and overcome those group differences. Well,
our strength in the past has related to our ability to see our diversity as a strength. When you think back to early America, you had all these communities with maybe 25, 50, or 100 families from different areas of the world. Sometimes they couldn't even speak to each other because they spoke different languages. But they understood the concept of the common good, how you work together for the common community. And that's how we became so strong so quickly, even though we had a diverse population. And what those who want to fundamentally change America have discovered is that if they can exploit those differences and drive wedges between us on the basis of race, age, income, gender, religion, political affiliation, then half of their job is completed. And they're doing a good job of that. What we have to do is recognize that we're being manipulated. Communication, talking to each other. You don't have to agree about everything. I always say if two people agree about everything, one of them isn't necessary. We need everybody.
That's great.
And just learn to be respectful of other people's opinion. We choose our destiny. We can decide as Americans, do we want to succumb to the forces of division and hatred, or do we want to grasp the incredible opportunities and strengths that we've manifested in the past?
We're speaking to Dr. Ben Carson, president of American Cornerstone Institute, and I think conservatives in this country sat on the sidelines for too long as our education system was manipulated and completely taken over by these cultural Marxists. But you're doing something about it. LittlePatriotsLearning.com is the website where you have a whole history curriculum that parents, you don't have to be a homeschooling parent, but it's a great resource for homeschooling parents.
Yes.
But if your parents are if your kids are in a public school or a government school, they're not learning this stuff, and you should be doing the Little Patriots Learning curriculum with your kids, regardless of what their school circumstances are.
Absolutely.
And you specifically, by the way, have Thanksgiving content there for kids. So this weekend, parents could sit and go through it with their kids.
They can go back and find out what really happened. And we tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. But the fact of the matter is, if you're objective, there's a heck of a lot more good than there is bad and ugly. And you have, CRT and 1619, all these people who just seize on the bad and ugly and try to make that the foundation of who we are, which is a bunch of crap. And we just have to be much more aggressive in the way that we present them. All of our stuff on Little Patriots Learning is free of charge. And when you look at the materials, say, how could this possibly be free? Well, it's not really free, but what we do is we find people, patriotic Americans who are willing to underwrite the cost of it so that we can make it available to everybody free of charge.
Oh, that's great.
And
All right.
that's really the key. That's really the key.
Patriots.
We have to be aggressive.
LittlePatriotsLearning.com. We do have to be aggressive. I'm getting so aggressive because I know you're going to stick with us for one more segment, so I want to make sure we have time for that. Dr. Ben Carson is going to stick with us because you recently made a big announcement, a big presidential endorsement, and I want to pick your brain about it a little bit. So we'll get to that in just a moment. It's LittlePatriotsLearning.com. Dr. Ben Carson is going to stick with us for one more segment. And we continue with Dr. Ben Carson, of course, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development during the Trump administration. And, Dr. Carson, you just endorsed your old boss, Donald Trump, for president. And I want to ask you, you talk about, and I love the fact that you talk about what unites us. We have more in this country that unites us than divides us. We actually have more in common. There's actually less anger and hatred, but the media plays this up. I want you to sort of discuss that through the lens of this endorsement, because a lot of people in the media, mostly in the media, and President Trump's political opponents, they would have us believe that we're divided because of Donald Trump. We're divided because of the way he goes about politics. What do you say to that, considering how important it is that we do come together?
Well, I say look at the facts. Look at the facts that when he was president before COVID hit, we had a booming economy, one of the best economies we've ever experienced. Extremely low unemployment. We've become energy independent. We had a secure border. I mean, all the horrible things that are going on now were not going on. It was going in the opposite direction. Now, some people may say, oh, it's just coincidence. He just happened to be there at the right time. I don't think so. And even more importantly than that, we have his opponents trying to weaponize the Department of Justice against him, to eliminate him, to put him away. If we allow that to stand, we will no longer have America as we know it.
Well, Dr. Carson,
Really
I think when you consider how President Trump can, despite all of the weaponization of the Justice Department and state AG, I mean across the board, the fight against him has actually just lifted his support in the polls. And when you consider a lot of demographics that the left has relied on and been a reliable base for, they're concerned that those voters are not turning out. Young people, blacks, Hispanics, they are increasingly saying no to President Biden based on his policies and yes to President Trump because their life was better. You headed up the department, headed up HUD. Can you talk to us about some of the policies that you think we could potentially look forward to if President Trump is reelected that would actually help people in a way that the Biden administration's Bidenomics has not?
Well, one of the big things, here talked about during this administration were the opportunity zones that incentivize the private sector to invest money into those deprived areas of our country. And it was anticipated that the incentives that were put in place would bring in $100 billion over a 10-year period of time. It brought in $75 billion in only 2 years before COVID hit.
Wow.
I mean, those are amazing programs and family self-sufficiency programs. We removed a lot of the restrictions when it came to homelessness so that the faith-based organizations could help. Because when you stop and you think about it, who used to take care of the homeless before all these big government programs? It was our faith-based organizations, our community organizations. They can do it a heck of a lot better. And if we work with them instead of against them, those are the kinds of things that work.
We're talking to Dr. Ben Carson, and in light of your endorsement of President Trump, I was going to ask you if you would serve in his cabinet if he were asked, but based on how you've answered that question in the past, I think the better question is, has Candy given you permission to serve in the cabinet yet?
Well, I'll tell you, Candy is a trooper. And, you know, in the beginning, she was not very enthusiastic about me going to government. But now she recognizes that, you know, we have to sacrifice. We have to put forth every effort to save this country for those who are coming after us. And we have to remember what those who came before us did for us.
I'm going to take that as a maybe. One last question. You and I, we're both from Detroit, and tomorrow, Thanksgiving tradition, the Lions are playing, but not like previous Thanksgivings. They actually are doing really well this year. They probably should win the game. They've got the second best record in football. Are you a believer? Are you on board with the Lions?
Hey, I would love to see the Lions do something. It's been waiting for a long time.
Yeah.
It's been back since the days of Night Train Lane. I mean, it's a long time ago.
All right. Well, enjoy the game tomorrow with your turkey, and thanks for joining us. It's always great to hear your voice, especially around the holidays. Dr. Ben
Good to
Carson.
be with you.
Thank you,
Happy
sir. Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.